Now, as we've been reporting all morning, junior doctors are staging their longest period of industrial action, walking out for 6 days over pay and conditions. Now, NHS chiefs say it will have a significant impact on routine care.
Earlier, we heard from the co-chair of the BMA Doctors Committee, Dr. Robert Laurenson, who had this message to the government.
If the government have another offer to make, and it's a credible offer that we can put to our members, then of course the strike action can be averted. And Victoria Atkins says she has another offer to make. So it begs the question, why didn't she make that offer before the deadline? Or why hasn't she made it in the 4 weeks since talks broke down when they pushed us out of the room?
OK, let's find out what the Labour Party would do to bring harmony back to the junior doctor ranks. We're joined now by the Shadow Minister without portfolio, Nick Thomas-Symonds. And there he is, and there's the picture. Good morning, Nick. Happy New Year. How are you?
Good morning, Jeremy. Happy New Year. Good to join you. And I look forward to the day, Jeremy, where you keep your promise and I have a new painting behind me.
I will sort you out a Rembrandt. Now, listen to me, my friend. I think that the next 12 months are going to be very interesting. And just hear me out. You've sat on the sidelines, polished your act and watched the Tories implode. You would accept, I'm sure, as Minister without portfolio, Shadow Minister, now is the time for the light to be shone on what actually will happen if Sir Keir Starmer gets to number 10. So I start today by your response to the junior doctors' strikes, because your leader, and I think it's unprecedented, really, for a Labour politician, has already come out and said that junior doctors will not be getting 35%. And I've been saying, and Rosie, all of us here, and all the people responding, the optics in the middle of a cost of living crisis are appalling. So how would you solve it, Nick?
Well, firstly, Jeremy, we have said quite clearly that the 35% demand is unaffordable. We've been very honest about that. But at the same time, I think we have to bear in mind that it is an opening bid in a negotiation. Now, what we would be trying to do is to find that landing zone. It's not going to be a zone where everybody gets what they want, but it's some place, some area that both sides can live with. And I think you can see the contrast, because listening to the video you showed a moment or two ago, we hear that talks broke down 4 weeks ago. You've got the Health Secretary apparently saying there's an offer to make, but it hasn't been made. I mean, this kind of communication from the government, this kind of approach from the government just isn't good enough. The government should have been straining every sinew, not just now, to bring this industrial action, highly disruptive industrial action, to an end, but they shouldn't have allowed that 4-week period to pass without continuing the negotiating room.
I think we're quite impatient to know how Labour would be handling it differently. So you inherit this situation. Junior doctors say 6 days we're going to go on strike. What could you afford to give them? And would you set any conditions to restart negotiations?
Give us the figure, Nick.
Would you talk to them while they were still on strike, for example?
Well, I think we would have to straight away get back around the table. But as I understand the position that the junior doctors are taking, they are saying there's an offer they expect to come, and then they would put it to their members. So it seems ridiculous we are in that situation. We would have been, not for the last 4 weeks, sat on the sidelines doing nothing. We would have been straining every sinew in that period.
But Nick, you know me well enough, right? We've worked together a lot. Nurses got 5% and 1,500 quid. Doctors in Scotland took 12.4%. Consultants, 13%, right? They were offered 8.8 and 3%, which is 11.8. What would you, very quickly, as a government, put on the table to rectify this situation? Have you got a figure? Can you give us a figure?
Look, I'm not close enough to the negotiations to tell you what the figure is that would bring this to an end. Like, I'm not, be irresponsible of me to just pluck a figure out of the air. But if I was close to these negotiations, or whether it was Wes Streeting as hopefully the Health Secretary after the election, I would hope him to be, it would be about sitting around that table, getting to that figure. But what we have said is, look, 35% is unaffordable. We've been absolutely clear about that. But it's around that table, hour after hour, that we would get to the figure, as has happened, as you pointed out, Jeremy, with the nurses previously, and indeed the consultants.
But that doesn't actually sound very different from what the Conservatives are saying. The Health Secretary says, I've got a chequebook, it's open, but you need to just not be on strike to restart those conversations. How is your strategy different to the current government?
Well, because they haven't done anything for the past 4 weeks. That's where
Victoria
it's different.
Atkins says that there's room to talk. Just stop being on strike and then we can.
Well, they haven't been on strike for the past 4 weeks, but the talks broke down 4 weeks ago. So there was the space for the government to engage.
I thought they were on
Junior
strike
doctors-
before Christmas, weren't they?
Well, yeah, I think you just heard then in your VT about the breaking down of the talks 4 weeks ago, and the government certainly hasn't been straining every sinew for this to avoid the strikes. They've passed aggressive legislation in the past year as well, which has simply made the situation and atmosphere worse. But I think anyone could say that this government and the various health secretaries have been sat around the table to the extent that they could have been, and that's where the approach would have been different.
Okay. You're coming today to tell us that Labour is going to be the party for the working person, and you know the doctors may say that includes them as well. What is that pitch? Because we're looking at the next few months ahead for real clarity from the Labour Party, so we know when we go to vote what we're actually voting for. What is that pitch you've got?
Well, let's start with the National Health Service, as that's been the discussion that we've quite rightly had, given what's happening today. We would be abolishing the so-called non-dom tax status. We're saying a very fair principle that if you live in this country, you should pay tax on all your income and your assets here. We would be using that money to tackle the backlog in our NHS. We would like to see 2 million additional appointments and operations to really start attacking those waiting lists. We think there are dental deserts across the UK, and particularly in England, we're promising there'd be 700,000 more dentist appointments. So that's just the pitch there on the National Health Service. But central to our pitch is going to be that we have to properly grow the economy and ease the cost of living. We want to do things like insulate homes up and down the country to bring down bills, create GB energy to bring down the wholesale price of energy, tackle the unfair car insurance market where people are paying hundreds of pounds more in premium, sometimes being penalised for loyalty to car insurance companies, and actually build the homes of the future. We've said we build 1.5 million homes in the first 5 years of a Labour government, not only because people need that chance to get on the housing ladder, but to bring down the cost of mortgages too. So that's going to be central to our focus. And indeed, we'll be hearing a speech from Keir Starmer tomorrow to start off this, what I hope will be a year of change.
And we look forward to that. Nick Thomas-Symonds.
Nick, thank you, my friend.
Thank you
Painting on the
very
way.
much.